talking about the modes. In part 3 here, we're going to put it all together in what I'd like to call the master plan. Now hopefully you've watched the first two and you understand the way that a key has 7 tones in it, where the half steps and whole steps are, how to play all up and down a major scale on one string, and you should be well versed in the Ionian mode. What I've done is, in the past I show you these diagrams. I have colored circles with numbers in them, saying this is the 1 of the scale, the 2 of the scale, the 3. This is the way I visualize it on the neck. And when I'm looking at the neck, I see those patterns, they sort of light up for me, and I know all the options of which notes I can and cannot hit, and how each of them is going to sound. Now let's look at this first diagram. I showed you this before. We have the 7 modes stacked up, the names of each of them. I use capital Roman numerals for the 1, 4, and 5, which are green, and they're majors. The 1, 3, 5 out of them forms a major chord. The 2, 3, and 6 I have marked as orange. Those would be denoted with lowercase Roman numerals because they're minor. The only difference is the 3 got flatted. That's the difference between major and minor, and that's the only difference that you'll see in the 1, 3, and 5 between these 3 major modes and 3 minor modes. The 7th one, our Locrian, is a diminished triad or a half diminished arpeggio, which we'll go into in later. For now, I want to show you another chart. Okay, so what I've done here is I'm showing you 6 of the 7 modes. I decided to put 6 because this way you could see it easier on the screen. The numbers are bigger, and if you wanted, you could even, chart this out yourself, write it down. What I have is the number and the name of each mode above, and then what changes in relationship to the Ionian below. So in other words, Ionian is our template, our master major scale. But then if you look below it, the Lydian is exactly like the Ionian, except for one thing changed, and I have written there sharp 4 because that's the only thing that changes between Ionian and Lydian. Same thing with the Mixolydian next to it. The only thing that changes from the Ionian is the 7 is flatted. So all of these modes, what we're doing is looking at them in relationship to the Ionian, what changes. The Ionian starts on the first finger of the 6th string, and this 6-1, as you would call a 6th string first finger, Ionian is not the easiest to play, but it works great as far as you go through these modes, they get easier, you have less stretching to do. For example, when you look at the Dorian, we have the flat 7 and flat 3. Flat 3 means I'm playing in C minor. That minor flat 3 means you don't got to stretch there. And it still has the flat 7 of Mixolydian. The Aeolian next has 3 flats, flat 7, flat 3, flat 6. So now you don't have to stretch for that 6. So you want to play through these, get to know the differences. Ionian, Aeolian. And you could do the higher octave, you can play through the arpeggios, the 1, 3, 5. 1, 3, 5 of the Aeolian. Again, the 2, 3, and 6, Dorian, Phrygian, Aeolian, are all minor. They all have the same 1, flat 3, and 5 for their minor arpeggios. Any of these combinations of 1, 3, and 5 coming out of any of these modes will give you a chord. Like you can play just 2 or 3 or 4 notes, you'll end up with a minor chord. So really, you just have to memorize the differences from Ionian, and it'll make it a lot easier to memorize these modes. The number 6 mode, Aeolian, has the flat 7, flat 3 of the Dorian, but it also has a flat 6. Above that we have our 3, which is Phrygian. It's minor also. It has a flat 7, 3, 6, 2. I'm naming them in the order that they change as we go through the modes. And then lastly, let's take a look at the Locrian. Locrian has a flat 7, 3, 6, 2, 5. Now, once you've played all of these, I would say play them all in one position. Let's say if we're in C, you know, you play through your Ionian. Then you say, okay, Lydian, we're going to sharp the 4. And pay attention to that sharp 4, how it changes the sound. Also, think of the numbers as you're playing. Mixed Lydian has a flat 7. Again, it changes the mood. Dorian, we flat to 3. Now, you don't have to practice. It could be very dry, just running up and down scales. What you could do is just take a little section here, like let's say I'll take the middle strings. Think of the numbers. 1 is home bass. Then we'll switch from Ionian to Dorian, for example. And we'll add a second string. Here's the Ionian. Here's the Dorian. And you can play the chords if you wanted to, like a C major would go with the Ionian. C minor would go with the Dorian major. Okay. Once you've mastered, or at least got familiar with these 7 modes, what changes from each to the next, what we're going to do is we're going to stack them up in order in the key. Okay, so let's say you've played through all these 7 modes, you become familiar with the differences between them, which one has the flat 7, the flat 7, 3, the flat 7, 3, 6, and so on. What we're going to do next is we're going to take them all and stack them all up within a key. We'll use the key of E. Key of E. And I'll use my open 6th string. Now, you've been playing that Ionian. What we're going to do now, since we're starting on the open, all the notes that you used to play with your first finger, hopefully you could visualize those as open notes. In 1, 2, 3 here. Whole steps between them. 4, 5, 6. 7, 1 is your half step. That's your E again, your 1. 2. 3 to 4 is a half step. 5, 6, 7 are whole steps, and the 1 at the top. That's our 1 mode Ionian. Our number 2 mode, Dorian, would start on the 2nd tone of the scale, and you just use that pattern. You should probably play the arpeggios. I'm playing the 1, 3, 5, and 7 there, or you could just practice the 1, 3, 5. Or play them in chunks as a minor chord. Next up, on the 3 note of the scale, notice it was the 2nd note of the Dorian. That's going to become our beginning for our Phrygian mode. Now, as you're doing these, you're going to notice there's an overlap. Like the notes here that used to be 5 and 6 and 1 and 2 in Dorian are now 4 and 5 and 7 and 1 in Phrygian. All these numbers can seem complicated, but it's really not. It's just 7 tones, and what we're learning is the relationships between all of them. Also, you're going to notice a lot of patterns that repeat again. The 1 to 3 in Dorian, minor 3rd, is the same as the 1, 3 in Phrygian. It's that same shape. The 1, 3 in the next mode, which would be Lydian, starting on our 4th tone of the key, that 1, 3 is the same as the 1, 3 of the Ionian that we had. So we play our Lydian here. We go up to the 5th tone, that's our mixed Lydian. 6th tone is Aeolian. Our 7th tone is the Locrian. And then we're back, hopefully, if you did all the distances correctly, you're back on an E for your E Ionian again, our 1 mode. Okay, so this might seem like a lot, because you have all these 7 modes and you got all these notes in each mode, but what we could do is break them down and say, let's look at a little piece of each mode and look at the relationships between them. If I was to say take 1, 2, 3 of Ionian, the 1, 2, 3 of Locrian, the 1, 2, 3 of Aeolian, Mixolydian, and so on, this is what you would call a motif. It's a little phrase, a musical phrase, a little piece of a melody, and then you could stick the motif together into larger, more extended phrases or melodies. You could say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. And in this way, you're getting piece by piece, connecting it with the modes below and above it. I'm going down, you could go up, you could start anywhere you want. You could say, okay, I'm in Lydian, and I'll start in the middle, and I'll just play 1, 3, go up. Or we could say 1, 3, 4, 5, for example. I'm going 1, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 1 in the middle of the Lydian, in the Mixolydian, also, what you could do is pick out a couple of chord changes and say E chord to the A chord, and we'll say we're in Ionian, then we're going to Lydian, and play through motifs or just jam around, you know. That's a lot of jumping. But that brings us to our next point. Every mode is in every other mode. For example, I'm starting here and I'm playing my 6-1 Ionian because it's starting on the 6th string, 1st finger. If I look at the shape below it, or Locrian form, but I start on the 2nd tone, that's still my E, and we'll make that the number 1 and say, playing through that same shape, sounds identical. That would be our 6-2 Ionian. Then we go down to our next shape, which is Aeolian. Start on our pinky there. Sounds the same. That's our 6-4 Ionian. And you could go through all of the modes in this way, playing the Mixolydian shape, but I'm starting on E here. The 4th tone of Mixolydian is the 1 of an E Ionian. The 5 tone of the Lydian is the 1 tone of an E Ionian. The 6th tone of the Phrygian is the 1 tone of an E Ionian. And this is what we would call our 5-4 shape, because our 5-4 Ionian, because it's starting on the 5th string, 4th finger. Here we will start on the 4th string. Because we're in Dorian, the 7 of Dorian is the same as the 1 of Ionian. I hope this does not seem too confusing. As you go through these, it'll come in time. And eventually, you want to be able to play every mode within every other mode. But don't try and do them all at once. You might say, this week I'm just working, or this month, you know, whatever your pace is, you might say, okay, I'm just working on Dorians. I'll start with, say, D Dorian. Jam around through it. And then you say, well, what's below Dorian is Ionian. The 2 of the Ionian, that will form another Dorian mode. And below that is the Locrian. where that is the D, and that's our D Dorian. In this way, what you'll be able to play is any chord change in any position. You should be able to like stay right there and say, here's my 1-3-5 of my D minor, here's my 1-3-5 of, or 5-1-3 actually, of my G, which would be in this key. If that was Dorian, this would be a Mixolydian. You got to do a little math and say, well, that's my 2 mode, 3-4-5 mode. And so on. So you'll be able to play every mode. Now, I could have told you the easier way to do this would be to say, start on an Ionian, E Ionian, and say, we start on the 1, that's Ionian. Start on the second point, whoops, whoops, that's our Dorian. Start on the 3rd tone here, that's a Phrygian. Start here, that's our Lydian. That would be the Mixolydian. That would be easier, but I think it wouldn't be as edifying, educational. But you could play all the 1-3-5s. The 1-3-5 off the 1 note, that's our Ionian major triad. The 2-4-6 of this Ionian shape is a 1-3-5 of a Dorian. And the 3-5-7 of the Ionian is actually also the 1-3-5 of a Phrygian, and so on up the line. Okay, so as time goes on, what we're going to do is we're going to look at each of these modes, focus on them, and look at the typical chord progressions that you might use with each mode. That's all for now. I hope you'll like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time as we delve a little bit deeper. Thanks.